What's going on, y'all? So I just got back from Charleston visiting some family on my wife's side, and it reminded me of a concept or of a topic that I haven't talked about a whole lot in my short form content or on this YouTube channel that I really wanted to dig into. Today, we're going to be talking about how to relax and how to actually rest, especially if you work in one of these highly demanding corporate fields like myself. I was on the account team for an advertising agency. I was working at a Series A venture funded but very, very scrappy startup. And so I've been in some really, really crazy, hectic, high, fast-paced work environments that have caused a lot of stress. And so I wanted to talk a bit about a framework that I've developed to rest in those scenarios, especially when you do get the chance to take some vacation. So before we get into how you rest, I do want to talk about work, because before someone, grabs this video or clips it or takes the wrong thing away from this video, I'm 100% an advocate of learning how to work hard. I see hard work or the hustle or grinding as like a gear. And I think even if you want to work for yourself one day, even if you don't want to go the corporate path, you want to start a business, be an entrepreneur, you have to learn to develop the gear within you that is the hustle, that is the hard work, right? But you don't want to grind to grind. When I was in consulting, right out of college, I was working most nights until 8, sometimes until 10, sometimes until midnight, and a couple times, even past midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning, right, to get something ready and in the client's hands or in my director's hands by 8 o'clock that next morning. And going through that experience really taught me what I was capable of from a work perspective, and I was able to fine tune and really get a good idea of what the grind actually is, how to actually hustle. And I think that's the most important skill you can learn, especially if you're early on in your career. And so, I'm going to be talking about how to rest, how to pull away, how to enjoy your vacation, but I don't want the overall message of work to be lost, that you should learn how to hustle, but you don't want to grind to grind. And that's a mistake I see young people make all the time. A lot of times, if you're the first year analyst at a bank or you're a first year analyst at a consulting firm, a lot of your grinding is just because you don't know what to do yet, or you aren't as efficient at your work. That's just the truth. And then over time, you really learn how to use those moments where you do have to stay up all night, where you do have to work a lot, in the moments where it really matters. So just have that be another takeaway too. Learn to grind and then know when to turn on the grind. This was not a skill I had mastered at all when I was early in my career. That's why I say this. I mean, when I was working my first few jobs at a college, I missed family funerals because I was working. I worked New Year's Eve, literally saw fireworks going off in the distance from the client site window where I was at, presiding over this huge release and huge project we had going live that night overseas. I've had a couple crippling migraines, one of which put me in the hospital and they thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I literally couldn't put a sentence together. I was so stressed out, conked out, just like terrible, terrible situation just because of the stress I put on myself in a work situation. And honestly, that is in part my fault. I mean, the one thing that really no one tells you about any kind of work, but especially in my experience in the corporate field, is that every single company will take as much from you as you allow them to take. And so another thing you have to keep in mind is that when you are working for these jobs, no matter how prestigious it is, no matter how much they're paying you, they are not entitled, they shouldn't be entitled to every single waking hour you have. And so it may take a couple months, maybe a year in some cases, to build up, some of the relationship capital to put these boundaries in place, but you want to make sure that you start to, elbow out of the I will give my life to this company, I will work 24/7 for this company. That's not really sustainable, and that's how people burn out. That's how people leave career fields maybe earlier than they should have, and it'll take away from your longevity if you're just working yourself to the bone, and then when you can't work anymore, you just leave that job or you just leave that industry. But boundaries in place as well. And for me, a helpful tool for figuring out how to do that was making the distinction between having a high level of attachment to the work I'm doing versus having a high level of attachment to my sense of self and who I am as a professional and what my professional values are. I think a lot of stress was caused in my early career because I put the entire success of the entire organization, the entire company on my shoulders. So if the stock price goes down, if the company is going through layoffs, if we're not making as many sales as we should, if we're not growing as fast as we could. I put a lot of that on my shoulders, and I took a lot of ownership of that, like psychologically, when I realized later on in my career that I didn't really need to that degree. Taking a little bit of ownership or responsibility in your work is of course required, and that's good, especially if you're in a management level position. Every single decision that is made by that company is not yours. And let's be honest, a lot of times companies go through hard times because of leadership decisions that are made 2, 4, 6, 18 levels above wherever you happen to be at the company. So you want to make sure your work is done at the highest level of quality that you can do it at. But just understand that if the company does go through a hard time, or if you're at a company that's going through a hard time right now, maybe you've seen some layoffs, maybe you're seeing them cut back on the catered lunches or whatever that happens to be in your industry. Don't put that on your shoulders. Don't go to bed with that stress in your head and in your hands like it was with me, because I promise you it's not leading anywhere productive. And let me just mention this too, that companies will take whatever they can from you. And that is just a fact. I don't mean to be cynical or negative when I say that, but when you tell someone you can work weekends, when you tell someone you can work nights, they will expect that you will always be able to work nights and weekends. And so that's why it is so important to put these boundaries in place, because if you don't, they will not exist. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's no one's job to protect those boundaries. That has to be your responsibility. That is something you should own. It should be you saying, hey, I've got this thing planned, or hey, I don't have anything planned, but that's just not acceptable to me, and I don't like to do this, or let's figure out, don't say that, let's figure out another way of accomplishing this task, or can this be done at this time, or what can we move around to prioritize this now during regular working hours. Like, you may have to get a little creative with it, but you have to start creating those boundaries, because as I've seen and as I've witnessed in my own career, if you put no boundaries in place, there will be no boundaries. And these companies will extract every waking hour from you that you allow them to. But when you are able to step away and take some PTO, go out of office, take that vacation to, Aruba, to Mexico, to the Bahamas, to Charleston, in my case, I have developed a really helpful framework that's allowed me to unwind and reset and really enjoy where I happen to be in that moment. I'm gonna call this the R.E.S.T framework. So first, very tactical tip, you wanna make sure you're removing notifications. Silent Slack, silent Teams. I know some people that move the app off their home screen or delete it entirely for the time they're in vacation, just because you do not want to be bothered with that. And even if you do end up checking notifications or doing a little bit of work or reading a couple emails while you're out, you want that to be on your terms. You don't want to be in the airport or at dinner with your family or on a date with your significant other in a spectacular exotic location and your phone is blowing up because some critical issue that you're not responsible for, that doesn't involve you at all, is blowing up your inbox and taking you out of that moment with your loved ones. Next, you want to explore your hobbies. Now, I talk about this in my content some, but you want to create push or pull situations in your life. You probably have a book that you want to read that you haven't been able to read yet. You probably have a show that you want to watch that you haven't been able to watch yet. And there are probably all these other restaurants and experiences that you want to experience wherever you happen to be going, or even in your hometown if you're not going anywhere. And you want to make sure that you're setting up those moments, put them on the calendar, and create a pull opportunity so you're drawn to doing those, and so you're less drawn to being tied to or tethered to your work. If you look at the calendar and for the week ahead while you're on vacation, it's full of exciting things to do, time to read those books, time to watch those shows, time to explore some of those hobbies, you'll be more inclined to look forward to that versus feel guilty or weird or strange about spending time away from work. Next, you want to set boundaries and you want to set your team up for success. And so before you leave, especially if you're a manager, honestly, scratch that. Before you leave, period, you need to create a document with the status of every single project that you happen to be working on. That way, anyone, whether it's your manager, a colleague, you don't know what happens when you go on vacation, right? So if anyone is brought into the company that needs to know what you were doing or the status of what you were doing, they can look at that document. I always do one in Google Sheets, very simple, just have the name of the project, the contact or backfill while you're gone, and then maybe some of the sub-initiatives or sub-tasks of that project, and then what the status is of those activities. This is really, really helpful so people don't have to bug you. Think of it like that. It's an investment while you're, before you go on vacation, to make sure people don't bug you while you actually take that time. Lastly, take the time to unwind. And so whenever I go on an extended vacation from work, like these past couple weeks, I was gone for like 10, 11 days, it was amazing. I dedicate the first day of that vacation and the last day of that vacation to unwind and recharge myself to get back into work. Now, what unwind means is that's the day I'm turning on notifications. That's the day I'm creating that calendar, whether it's mental or in my Google Calendar, all the cool things I'm going to do. It's me pulling away from work intentionally, and so I can get my vacation off on the right start. Because don't you hate that when you take time and you can't even enjoy it because you're thinking about work? Well, take the time intentionally to not think about those things and put them out of your mind, remove the notifications, close your work laptop. I highly recommend getting your own laptop or tablet or phone or whatever, like have a separate device you use that's just for you and in your life. That'll save you a lot of headaches in the future, trust me. And then on the day before you go back to work, spend some time, I know you guys aren't gonna like this, but spend some time going through some of those messages and opening up that work laptop, going through some of those messages, looking at your calendar for the week ahead, so that first day back from work doesn't slap you as it has for me in the past. That's my REST framework. This is how I'm able to put myself in a very relaxed state and really enjoy my vacation and time away while recharging and setting myself up to hit the ground running when I get back into the swing of things. So if this video helped you, like it, send it to someone, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.